1953, South Korea's per capita income was lower than Ghana's, lower than Haiti's. The country had just been flattened by war. No oil, no natural resources worth mentioning, a population that was 78% illiterate. And then something happened that economists still argue about today. 60 years later, South Korea is richer than Spain. It builds the world's ships, the world's memory chips, and somehow convinced every teenager on the planet to care deeply about K-pop. This isn't a story about hard work paying off. It's weirder than that. It's a story about how a government made a bet that probably shouldn't have worked. Here's what makes South Korea's rise uncomfortable to talk about. It didn't follow the rules we tell developing countries to follow. Free markets, open competition, let the best companies win. South Korea did the opposite, and it worked anyway. Which means either the rules are wrong, or South Korea is a dangerous exception that other countries shouldn't try to copy. That debate is still happening in economics departments right now. But the story itself? The story is wild. 1953, the Korean War ends. The peninsula is split. The South gets the cities and the ports, but the North kept most of the heavy industry and electricity generation. South Korea's entire economy is producing less than $1 billion a year. For context, that's what a decent-sized American shopping mall does annually. The country is surviving on American aid, bags of rice, powdered milk, used clothing. There's no industrial base, most people farm, the government is unstable and corrupt. There is no obvious path forward. Then, in 1961, a general named Park Chung-hee takes power in a military coup. And Park has an idea, a specific idea. He looks at Japan's rise after World War II and thinks we can do that. Here's the model Park builds. The government picks industries, not based on what South Korea is good at right now, based on what Park thinks South Korea should be good at in 20 years. Steel, ships, electronics, chemicals. Then the government picks companies to dominate those industries. They're called chaebol, family-owned conglomerates, Samsung, Hyundai, LG. The government gives them everything: cheap loans, tax breaks, protection from foreign competition, access to imported technology. In exchange, the chaebol have to export. They have to compete globally. If they fail, the loans get cut off. If they succeed, they get bigger loans for the next industry. It's capitalism, but with the government's hand so deep in the system you can see the puppet strings. Let's break down how this actually worked, because the details are where it gets strange. The government controlled the banks, all of them, so when Samsung wanted to build a semiconductor plant in the 1980s, the government could just decide, yes, you get the money. Even though Samsung had zero experience making chips, even though the investment looked insane. The government also controlled foreign exchange. If you were a Korean company and you wanted dollars to buy foreign equipment, you needed government approval. So the chaebol stayed loyal. They built what Park's government told them to build. And education. The government poured money into schools, technical training, engineering programs. By the 1970s, South Korea had one of the highest literacy rates in the developing world. The workforce was ready before the factories even existed. Here's the part that sounds impossible. In 1965, South Korea exported $75 million worth of goods. By 1980, $17 billion. That's not a typo. That's a 100-fold increase in 15 years. But nothing is free. Park Chung-hee ran a dictatorship. Political dissent was crushed. Labor unions were banned. Workers in the factories pulling 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, for wages that barely moved. The chaebol got rich. The workers, they were told to wait. And the debt. South Korea borrowed heavily. Foreign banks loved lending to a country that was growing this fast. But by the early 1980s, South Korea's debt to GDP ratio was approaching 50%. If the bet failed, the entire country could collapse. Park didn't see the full result. He was assassinated in 1979 by his own intelligence chief. But the system kept running because by then it had momentum. The 1980s are when South Korea stops being weird and starts being impressive. The Chaebol begin exporting cars. Hyundai's first car in America, the XL, was cheap and unreliable, but it sold because it was really cheap. And then Hyundai got there. Samsung moves into semiconductors. This decision looked deranged at the time. Memory chips were dominated by American and Japanese companies. The market was brutal. Prices collapsed regularly. But Samsung had something American companies didn't: government backing. When chip prices crashed in the mid-80s, Samsung kept building factories. American competitors pulled back, and when prices recovered, Samsung owned the market. By 1995, South Korea is the world's largest producer of memory chips, a product that didn't exist in the country 15 years earlier. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable for economists. South Korea violated nearly every rule of the Washington Consensus. That's the playbook international institutions like the IMF give to developing countries. Open your markets, privatize, reduce government intervention. South Korea did the opposite and grew faster than almost any country in history. So what does that mean? Does it mean the Washington Consensus is wrong? Or does it mean South Korea had unique advantages, a highly educated population, a culture that emphasized education and hard work, timing, geography, American military aid during the Cold War? Probably all of it, but the fact remains, the model worked. Then 1997 happens, the Asian financial crisis. Currency speculators attack the Thai baht. It collapses. Panic spreads. Indonesia, Malaysia, and then South Korea. The problem? All that debt. The Chaebol had borrowed in dollars. When the Korean won collapsed, the debt became unpayable. Companies that looked invincible in 1996 were suddenly bankrupt. South Korea had to go to the IMF, hat in hand. The IMF bailed them out, $58 billion. In exchange, South Korea had to do things the Washington Consensus way: open the markets, let companies fail, cut government spending. The irony is sharp. The system that made South Korea rich nearly killed it, and the reforms that saved it were the exact reforms South Korea had avoided for 40 years. Today, South Korea is the 10th largest economy in the world. Per capita income is over $30,000, higher than Italy, higher than Spain. The country produces cutting-edge technology. It's a cultural exporter. BTS, Squid Game, Korean skincare routines. But the Chaebols still dominate. Samsung's revenue alone is 20% of South Korea's entire GDP. That concentration of power creates problems: income inequality, youth unemployment, a startup culture that struggles to compete with the giants. And the population is aging faster than almost anywhere on Earth. South Korea's fertility rate is 0.72 children per woman, the lowest in the world. By 2100, the population could be half what it is now. You can't run an export economy without workers. So what does South Korea's story actually teach us? Can other countries copy the model? Vietnam is trying. Ethiopia is trying. But the world is different now. Global supply chains are more complex. Technology moves faster. And the political will to run an authoritarian development state for 30 years is rare. Maybe South Korea's rise was a one-time thing, a specific set of circumstances that won't repeat. Or maybe it proves that the rulebook we give developing countries is too rigid, that there are multiple paths to wealth. Here's the uncomfortable truth. South Korea became an economic giant by ignoring most of the advice economists give. It worked. But it almost didn't. And the countries trying to follow that path today are discovering that timing matters as much as strategy. The question isn't whether South Korea's model was right. The question is whether it's repeatable, and no one actually knows the answer.